My father, Alvin J. Woods Jr., was born on January the 19th, 1920 in Carmen, Oklahoma, to Alvin J. and Millie E. Woods. He was the fourth child and second son, who followed older siblings Almeda, James, and Edith. Younger siblings were Rosemary and Donald. While in school, he played alto horn in the Al Lean Band, played baseball and basketball for the school teams. He graduated from Alene High School in 1938. After high school, he worked in his father's grocery store, where he learned how to butcher meats. No one could sharpen a knife better than he. After Pearl Harbor was attacked, he, like millions of other young men, enlisted to serve. I believe he was recruited in Enid, Oklahoma. He joined the Army on August 1st, 1942, and spent time in basic training, showing an aptitude for mathematics, and transferred to the fledgling Army Air Corps. In 1941, Mather Field in Sacramento, California, became the site for advanced Navigator training. The Army Air Force's Navigator School began operating on August 2, 1941, and consisted of a rigorous 18-week course of instruction in celestial navigation and dead reckoning. To complete the course, cadets were required to spend 100 hours navigating during both local and long-range flights. After Daddy was accepted, he traveled, probably by train, to Sacramento in May of 1943. I think the Santa Fe Railroad made a stop in Enid. If not, he would have had to be driven, taken a bus, or hitchhiked to Wichita, Kansas. He rode southwest to Amarillo, Texas, west through New Mexico to Flagstaff, Arizona, west of Barstow, California, and north to Oakland and Sacramento. Alvin J. Woods Jr. received his commission at Mather Field Navigation School on August 21st, 1943. After navigation school, my father spent time in Long Beach, California, and was granted leave back home in Oklahoma. Sometime in 1943, he began his journey to the North African, Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, and European theaters of war. He journeyed by plane or train to West Palm Beach, Florida, the start of Air Transport Command's southern route to the Eastern Hemisphere. On the southern route, the Air Transport Command ferry of planes, equipment, fuel, and personnel followed a general pattern. Morrison Airfield in West Palm Beach, Florida, southeast, to Borinquen Field in Puerto Rico. Here, and at each subsequent stop, planes would refuel, maintenance tasks would be performed, and crews would be housed and fed. Unless weather conditions delayed the ferry, planes would take off on the next leg each day. Flying south from Puerto Rico, the next stop was Waller Field in Trinidad and Tobago. From there, the crews and their planes would fly to Atkinson Field in British Guinea, now Guyana. The next leg took them to Belém, Brazil. After Belém, they would fly to Fortaleza, Brazil. Then they would fly to the easternmost point in South America, Natal, for the jumping-off point to Africa and then the European Theater of Operations. All stories I remember from Daddy has he and his fellow crewmen offloading equipment and adding extra fuel tanks to make the 1,600 nautical mile flight from Natal to Dakar. He also spoke of his navigational responsibility during this flight being most exacting. My research indicated some planes made the jump from Natal to Fortaleza before heading to Africa and Dakar. I believe this picture, based on the terrain, was my father's temporary quarters in Dakar awaiting the air ferry north to the African theater of war. The ferry followed the route north to Tindouf, Algeria. From Tindouf, the ferry continued north to Marrakesh, Morocco, then further north to Casablanca. From Casablanca, the planes flew east-northeast to Oran. To Lergma Field, Algeria was the last North Africa base where Daddy practiced bombing runs in preparation to enter the European theater. In the summer of 1943, the daytime American and nighttime British bombing campaigns became loosely aligned as the Combined Bomber Offensive. This plan formally established around-the-clock bombing of the enemy. Until D-Day in 1944, the priority targets were Germany's fighter force and its ball-bearing and oil industries. My father arrived in the Mediterranean theater between November 1943 and January 1944. He continued training with the Air Echelon in Algeria for several weeks before joining the remainder of the group in Italy. In September 1943, the United States formed the 15th Air Force, uniting its Mediterranean-heavy bomber forces together at bases in southern Italy. Records show the aircraft my father flew arrived in Italy on September 9, 1943, and the name Boomerang was adopted on December 21, 1943. The U.S. Air Force could now mount major strategic raids in southern and eastern Europe, creating even more pressure on the Luftwaffe defense. My father's first mission was on January 30th, 1944, 11 days after his 24th birthday. From his base in Gioia del Colle, the target was the Fear radar station in Albania. There was no flak, no opposition, and no damage to the target despite a repeat attempt the next day. He flew 4 more missions out of Gioia del Colle, including the bombing of the Prüfening aircraft factory at Regensburg, Germany on February 25, 1944. February 20th to 25th, 1944. During the big week, 3,300 bombers were dispatched from England and 500 from Italy to bomb an aircraft manufacturing plant in Regensburg, Germany. 89 B-24s did not return to their bases in Italy. Also, 28 AAF fighters were shot down by the enemy, by both flak and interceptors, in desperate defense of the hinterland. Now, when we return from a mission, the Red Cross girls have donuts and coffee waiting for us. Not having much to eat since 4 a.m., what they offered tasted really good. What was even more rejuvenating was the stop by the debriefing tent. We struggled up, burdened by our gear and very tired. High-altitude flight always caused exhaustion. After debriefing, we stopped by the improvised flight surgeon's medicinal table, where we each received a 2-ounce shot of whiskey. Straight, no chaser. After the burning ceased, the whole world started to look different. The sun was shining and the air smelled good. It was no effort to pick up that heavy equipment, which a few minutes earlier seemed almost impossible, and to go whistling back to our area. My father's squadron moved to San Pancrazio Salentino Airfield in March of 1944 and flew 9 missions, including the Ploesti Romania Marshalling Yard and Astra Oil Refinery. The Ploesti oil refineries and marshalling yards in Romania had been bombed before with some success. This raid was planned to approach the target from multiple directions. On April 5, 1944, the following report logged. Target area was well covered with much damage done. Smoke pot screen was somewhat effective, but our attack caused fires and explosions from hits on storage tanks and enormous explosions from hits on refinery. Fires also caused by hits on tank car loading station and tank cars. There were several direct hits on installations at Marshalling Yard, on Railroad Overpass and North Choke Point. The squadron made the move to Castelluccio dei Sori, which was a semi-permanent airfield located approximately 15 kilometers south of Foggia, Apulia, Italy. Our whole crew has completed at least 25 missions, so we are eligible for leave on the fabled Isola di Capri at the entrance to the Bay of Naples. For 1 war-free week, we get to lie on the beaches of the idyllic little island, take a boat to the beautiful Blue Grotto, visit the Roman ruins, and sit at a sidewalk cafe sipping vino and eyeing the lovely signorinas. While there, my father and his companions enjoyed sailing to the mainland and back with friends. Personnel changes were numerous during the month of July 1944. 164 officers and enlisted men left the group, while 109 officers and enlisted men came in to take their places. The changes were due chiefly to completion of the 50 missions required in this theater for rotation and return to the States. My father, Lieutenant Woods, became squadron navigator in the 725th, and Lieutenant Ford succeeded Lieutenant Skinner of the 726th, who was killed in action on 22 of July. I am unsure of the date, but sometime that summer Lieutenant A.J. Woods received the Air Medal and was promoted to captain. It was on August 22nd and 23rd that the group completed the most disastrous missions in its history. On these two missions, 108th and 109th, 14 planes were shot down by aggressive enemy fighters, and another plane was so badly damaged that the crew had to bail out rather than attempt a landing. In addition to these losses, 2 more planes had to be salvaged. 140 crew members were MIA as a result, and it must be assumed that some did not survive to become POW. The Luftwaffe paid heavily again for its victories, since our gunners destroyed 33 planes, probably destroyed 15 more and damaged 9. The Lobau oil plant in Markersdorf Aerodrome at Vienna, Austria were the targets on these 2 missions, and enemy reaction proved conclusively that the Luftwaffe was not dead. Returning crew members told of waves of enemy fighters attacking without regard to losses, in waves of 10 or more. Fighter cover was not available at the time, and it was inevitable that our losses would be heavy. The 15th Air Force received 2 Presidential Citation Awards on September 4th, 1944, for the campaigns in Regensburg and Ploesti, and another on October 2nd, for the campaign on the Markersdorf airfield in Vienna. These citations and other achievements by my father, Captain Woods, are noted in the Certificate of Valor upon his completion of 50 missions. He was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Air Medal with 4 oak leaf clusters. He also earned campaign medals for the European, African, and Middle Eastern theaters and bronze battle stars for the Italian and Southern France campaigns. Special achievements included his service as squadron navigator and 50 missions over enemy territory. It is signed by the commander of the 451st Bombardment Group, Lieutenant Colonel James B. Knapseen, congratulating my father in this newspaper release. He completed his 50th mission on October 31st, 1944, with a mission to Podgorica, Yugoslavia. My father completed his tour and journeyed home, probably departing from Naples for the United States by military transport. By the fall of 1944, with thousands of heavy bombers and long-range fighters in action, the United States Air Force was poised to strike a knockout blow against the enemy's crucial transportation and oil sectors. Formations with more than 1,000 heavy bombers attacked targets at will, utterly destroying oil refineries, synthetic oil plants, bridges, and railroad marshalling yards across Germany. By early 1945, after months of relentless attacks, the strategic bombing campaign wrecked Germany's transportation system and reduced its oil production to a trickle. This destruction left the Wehrmacht German army severely weakened from lack of supplies and fuel. With its air force defeated and its infrastructure in total ruin, Nazi Germany succumbed to Allied ground advances from the east and the West in May 1945. When my father returned home, he took full advantage of military benefits by completing his degree at Texas A&M University in 1948, committing to the Air Force Reserves, retiring as a lieutenant colonel with full benefits, and acquiring government employment with the Corps of Engineers and later housing and urban development through professional and military contacts. He met my mother, Dina Faye Wells, in Fort Worth, Texas, and they eloped to Hope, Arkansas, in 1949. They had 3 children, Woodrow, Jim, and me, Dan. My father bought 27.5 acres in southeast Tarrant County that he farmed and raised cattle while working full-time in Fort Worth and later in Dallas with HUD. Prior to the establishment of FEMA, those emergency management services were coordinated through housing and urban development. He would be gone weeks at a time, providing relief to those affected by Hurricane Celia, a Category 4 hurricane in August 1970, Edith, a Category 5 hurricane in 1971, and Hurricane Agnes in 1972. He retired in 1980 and enjoyed traveling, especially to the 451st Bomb Group reunions. Captain John Jack Searney, Operations Officer, certified my father's completion of 50 missions while stationed in Italy. This photo is of Jay Woods and Jack Searney aboard the Delta Queen, somewhere along the Mississippi River. Dated like the military, 14 April 03. Two guys that made it back to build their lives.